Welcome back to Not Enough Projects. Today we're back on this 1948 Packard. Today we're going to be digging into the fuel system, hopefully figuring out why we're not drawing any fuel from the tank. Spoiler alert, you're going to get to see some butchery happen with the fuel tank, but we'll get it figured out in the end, so let's start digging in. Oh, you're covered in varnished gas. Awesome. We got a real easy time dropping this down. Just got the two straps. Not here, not there. Should come down. We could try to drain the tank first, but I only put a couple gallons in, and I think it was bone dry. So, it's not going to be too heavy, I don't think. But if it is, then you're just going to get to watch me get crushed. So, fun times either way. So, I guess this is actually the first time you guys have been under the car. I don't have it lifted up super high, so it's a little awkward, but as you can tell, it's a grease ball. At least the transmission is. I still have, there's a couple different overdrive units these could have come with. I still haven't actually figured out which one it is. Just haven't spent the time to look at it. And we haven't gotten to that point yet, because we can't even drive it fast enough to get it to overdrive. You can see, real greasy, and there's the reason why. You got the road draft tube right there. Engine's not as bad because it's in front of the road draft tube. Overall, it's pretty good. Do need to still do an oil change, but we will get to that. Rust-wise, really not bad at all. The frame's got service rust, nothing rotting. Exhaust isn't even rotted at all. Floors are pretty dang solid. There are a couple little spots that have rusted through. Right here, this is from a water leak in the door seal, I believe. You can see the guy who was restoring this made some questionable repair decisions. Luckily, it doesn't look like the cross member or anything is rusted out, it's just the floor sheet metal, so that's an easy fix if we ever get crazy fixing that. Take the fiberglass mat out and actually just weld a piece of sheet metal in. But anyways, back to the fuel line. Yeah, differential has some leaks, leaking from the pinion, and it's seeping from the axle housing and the center section. Not a big deal, but we will want to check the fluid level on that before we go too crazy driving around the road. Okay, so we're at the front. This should be our fuel line right here. Keeps going. Right here, I believe. Or is that the brake? That's the brake. Oh, I see. It's on the outside of the frame. So here we are. Funny, the body mounts are just like leather pieces. They actually look okay. Okay, that's easier to access than I thought it was going to be. Let's pop that line off. Is there no pickup? So we may just spill a bunch of fuel out. I don't know, we'll see. Alrighty, we put a couple gallons in, so there's a good chance that we are below the level here, so I would not be surprised if it spilled out, so I've got a little catch can. Yeah, ooh, that is some varnishy looking gas. Trying to keep my hand out of the range of fire. Because if you've ever had varnished gas on you, you know the smell does not go away very quickly. I mean, this is not by far the worst gas I've seen. But we'd probably still run just fine off that. Okay, so that was just stuff in the line. There's nothing coming out of the tank. So I'm gonna guess we have something plugged in the tank, but let's go get the air gun. I'll blow through the line up front, and you will watch to see if anything comes out. So I can't really see what just happened, but judging by the sounds, I think it's safe to say our line's not plugged up. So let's blow some air into the tank. I'm gonna take the lid off of the fill cap so that we don't blow the tank up. Let's see what happens. Yeah, it's plugged. So we're dropping the tank. Not a huge deal. Luckily it should be pretty easy on this thing. Oh, you're covered in varnished gas. Awesome. We got a real easy time dropping this down. Just got the two straps. Not here, not there. Should come down. We could try to drain the tank first, but I only put a couple gallons in and I think it was bone dry. So it's not going to be too heavy, I don't think. But if it is, then you're just going to get to watch me get crushed. So fun times either way. Now we do still have the sender connected somewhere, so we'll have to... Ew, we're twisting it. We'll have to be aware of that, but other than that, should be okay. Gotta grab something to keep that from twisting. Man, Packard really loved their split washers. Alright, let's get all cleaned up around here. And we can pop the sender unit out, get a look down into our tank. Maybe if we're really lucky, I just didn't have enough gas, I don't know. That one, I guess it's impossible that we're just gonna be lucky and I didn't put enough gas in it since it's plugged. Kinda forgot about that. It's turning, but it doesn't really want to. This isn't even one of my crappy screwdrivers. Maybe we should grab some lube. Just as long as they're not seized, they're nice because they're easy. You don't have to figure out what size, socket you need or wrench. Yeah, she's a little rusty. Ooh. I don't know if you guys could see how it's freeing up a little bit. Yeah, there we go. I doubt this works. We'll have to test. I don't even know. Most senders out there are wipers, so this wipes across a carbon trace, and based on the position it changes the resistance. It's basically just a voltage divider. This has like a cam or an eccentric, and then it pushes this plunger up and down. So I don't know how that works, or if it's really fixable once it goes bad. Okay, but that's not a big deal if that's just rust. Let's see how the tank is. It's a little crusty. Not the worst I've seen, though. There's some crust down there, but the tank still looks solid. You see the pickup? You can't see. Pickup is submerged. Now the problem is going to be, well, I wonder if the pickup will unscrew. I think it may. Let's get all this hardware sorted so that we don't lose it. Okay, let's tilt this up. Okay, I've got it tilted up, and what I'm wondering is if removing this takes the pickup out. Ooh. I don't know, it might. I think it's pressed in there or something. Let's grab some air. Maybe a wire, flexible wire that's kind of strong. Could poke through whatever crap is in there. I don't know. Let me see if I can find some wire. Maybe like solid copper wire. It'll kind of conform to the pickup shape. And as it bends along, maybe it'll poke through the rust or whatever varnish or gack that's plugging it up. Alright, we've got some of this kind of like baling wire stuff. It's not especially thick or rigid, but it might do the trick. Let's see. That far in. It could just be a bend that's too sharp for it, and it's just poking into it and grabbing. That's definitely possible. Too bad there's such a small access hole. Yeah, that's probably too sharp of a bend. That's my guess. I don't think it comes out. This is part of the problem. This hex is on here just to tighten so that you don't round it off. Or break it off the tank, rather. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think on that. Okay, so I've made some progress. I bent the tip of the wire kind of into a U and crimped it so that the end was rounded instead of just the cut end, because I am guessing what was stopping it is the cut end was digging into the side of the pickup tube. So now that that's there, it's gone in quite a bit more. We're gonna keep going and see if we can poke through. Yeah, I'm gonna keep working and I'll get you guys back once I figure something out. So here's an idea that probably doesn't have a great chance of working. Let's try to push out whatever's blocking by using hydraulic pressure and grease. So obviously this is probably not going to make a good enough seal to really build up any pressure, but what I'm thinking is we fill this with grease as much as we can, and then I've got, let's see, this screw, which is pretty much the exact diameter, and if we hammer it in, the grease might make enough pressure to push past whatever the blockage is. So that's the idea, at least. You can use the same idea to take out pilot bearings and that kind of stuff. So let's see what we can do. We're already filling it up right away. So let's take our screw. You see it's kind of springing back like that. That might not be a good enough seal. We'll see. Uh-oh. Just made it harder on ourselves. Because now it's suctioned in there. So this ought to be fun. There we go. Okay, let's look inside the tank again. Okay, I've been working at this for quite a while now, and we're not really making any progress. I think if you maybe had the fitting, a fitting that went from the 5/16 inverted flare that this is to the, I think it's like 3/8 24 or something that the grease gun is, you might be able to make enough pressure to break it or to pop it free, but we just don't have that. And I think probably, unfortunately, what we're going to have to do is cut here, take the whole pickup out, break it free from wire from the other side or something, I don't know, or rebend a tube, I don't know, and then re-weld back on. I think that's really the only way we can go, because this pickup's pretty dang plugged. I don't know how else we can make anything happen. I mean, I guess we could try chemical, you know, like vinegar or something to break whatever it is apart, but it's full of grease now. And even when we started, it was probably not going to fill up very well because there's lots of bends and stuff, so air gets trapped. So I don't think that's going to work. I don't think it's really worth the time. So I guess we're going to go ahead and drain the tank, and to make tanks safe to cut and weld on, you just fill them up with water because it displaces all the gas fumes. So let's go ahead and do that, I guess. So let's see how stuck that drain plug is. Can't tell Hopefully this is able to get a wrench on it, because if you're not careful, it'll actually just rip it out of the tank. Heat would probably free it up, but the whole point of doing this is so that we can safely heat the tank. Let's see what kind of horrors live inside. It is nice this tank at least has a drain plug, because anybody who has tried to drain stuff from tanks, like out of the sender hole or the fill tube, knows it's basically impossible, because the sender hole is on a flat part, so not all of the fluid's going to collect there, and the filler neck actually goes in on most tanks, and the tube protrudes, so you can't actually drain from it. So, I don't think that's the normal color for gas. It almost looks like off-road diesel, you know, where it's dyed red. That's funny. Good fire starter, at least, I guess. And this is all probably new gas that's dissolved varnish in it, because it actually doesn't smell terrible. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's varnish smell in it, but it's not like 4-year-old gas would normally smell. Because I'm sure this tank was bone dry before we put anything in it. You see we've already gotten some sediment out. Okay, time for the water. Okay, I'm gonna go in through the filler neck so it displaces all of the fumes and everything out this. Yum! Good stuff. Okay, there you go. We're overflowing. See some rainbows in the water. Don't worry, this is all being responsibly collected. Alright, we should be fine now to cut into our pickup. So let's flip her around and turn off the water. Flip her up on end and start cutting into it, I guess. Okay, I'm going to use the Dremel just because it's easier to make a smaller cut compared to the angle grinder. I may need the angle grinder for that back section. This just can't quite fit in it. There's our pickup. So it's got a support somewhere. Shoot. Almost kind of looks like the pickup tube's welded down there too. I guess I should have just cut an access hole up top. Well, now I've bent the pickup tube. Oh, I see. Yeah, the tube is just welded down to the tank there. So it looks like, unfortunately, we have to do a little bit more surgery than expected on this tank to get the pickup out. The tube is welded to the bottom of the tank. You can actually kind of see the little bulge there from where I've been bending it around. So we're going to cut this square out, and hopefully that'll get the pickup free. So yeah, I mean, that's what we got to do if we're going to fix the tank. I mean, we'll just have to weld the square back in place. It's not going to be perfect or original, but who cares? There's that. Shoot, lost it in there, of course. Couldn't make it easy on myself. Great, I cut into the tube too. Awesome, just awesome. We could probably weld that back up. Plus, that's not a huge deal because it's, you know, at the very bottom of the tank. But the whole point is this sticks up just a, you know, ½ inch off the end of the tank to pick up, or to avoid picking up any debris. Well, we got it out. Let's go see if we can unplug it. Nope, plug's solid with the air gun, which we already knew. I was just making sure I wasn't missing anything. Well, let's try going in with that wire from this side. Oh yeah. We are plugged up here. I don't know if we actually cut all the way through. I think we just did. Oh boy. She is chock full. That is solid. Wow. Yeah, there's no saving that without cutting the tube in half. Man, I don't even know what that is. Ugh. Maybe now it's a straight shot, the blowgun will work. Nope. Try going the other way. No. Not a chance. Look at that. Old gas still in there. Ugh. That stuff, it's so hard. Wow. Yeah, that's something. I don't think we are going to save this tube. Safe to say. Let's maybe cut it back and see if we can find a good section. Because maybe we could, you know, remake a new pickup. I don't know. Yeah, we'll have to see. Not gonna be easy with the tank cut the way it is. If we cut the tank in half, it'd be easy, but I don't want to weld that, so I don't trust myself. I mean, you can leak test it, obviously, but I don't want to have to deal with chasing down leaks forever. We can also clean the tank out real good and maybe try to just go simple on the pickup and not do this thing. Maybe just see if we can have something laid down, just like a straw from here. Go straight down. I don't know. Yeah, I think we need to cut this tube. So probably easiest to just use the angle grinder. Okay, got it sliced there. Let's see if we can blow through now. Oh yeah. Okay, so this section is fine. Needs cleaned out, I'm sure. But it blows clear. This one. So that's our plug section. And we're also plugged here, obviously. Let's see. No matter what we do, we're not going to be able to like splice in there or whatever. So I guess let's try to cut it off of here without ruining this piece, because I'd like to just use that to weld back in, makes it easy. So yeah, let's do that. Okay, we've got our pickup tube free, and I guess we should have tried heating it, because look at that. I think this is old gas. Heating it may have worked, but I mean, we're this far now, we're not going back. So there's our patch panel for the bottom. Here's our plugged up piece. I don't think we're going to use any of this. I think we're going to have to just make our own pickup, probably. Oh no, I see. It's because the reason it came out is because it cut right through. Yeah, man, just look how tight packed that is. There was no getting that out. And I should mention, I looked, and you can get a new gas tank for this thing, but it's like $1,000. So, safe to say we are not doing that under any circumstances. I'd rather just fit a junkyard tank in than do that. Which, I mean, I kind of understand it because it's such a low volume item. They gotta make sure they recoup costs of the tooling, but man, yeah, it's not like a, you know, an old truck tank, Ford truck tank or something, and you can get off Rock Auto for $50. Nope. Otherwise, I would not be doing this. Okay, so this section line's good. We could weld this back in. We just need to figure out how we're gonna make our new pickup. I mean, we theoretically could just bend this down and have that work, but I don't think it's at the lowest point of the tank, which might be okay. We'll just lose some tank capacity, but it won't suck up crap. It'll kind of accomplish the same deal as that. But it's also at the side of the tank. If we were to add more line, I mean, a compression fitting would be fine, probably. I don't know, I'll have to think on it. But if we add more line, the problem is we gotta do basically what they did before, because if it's not rigid and you have a whole bunch of line out here, the vibration could work harden it, or whatever, you know. So, I don't know. I'll think about it and mess around and we'll see. So I think we might actually get away with just this section that we have, because it sits in like so. It sits right there. So if I bend it so that it touches the tank bottom, or just about touches the tank bottom, it'll be basically here, which is actually the lowest part of the tank. So we may be fine there. Obviously I don't want to try to mess around with this too much, because again, this is steel line, it looks like, and it work hardens and gets brittle and breaks. It does look like this was brazed on here or soldered, so theoretically we could also melt it. I don't want to do that much work, honestly, so we've already got our work cut out for us on just this tiny part. So yeah, I think that's what we'll do. We'll bend it down just enough that it's almost touching the tank. Like, we'll bend it to where it's touching the tank, bend it back ½ inch, maybe a little less than that, 1/8 of an inch or something like that, and then we'll weld it back up, and I think it'll be fine. I don't see any reason why that wouldn't work. This tank's flat. I mean, it makes sense why they wanted to put it in the middle, because of fuel slosh, but I don't think, first of all, we're going to be doing any evasive autocross maneuvers in this thing, and also it'll probably be full most of the time, so yeah, I think we'll be okay. The inlet with vice grips, and see if we can massage the line down. I don't want to, again, twist it too much. You can see already it's getting a little stressed. Almost touching. Then just a little bit more. Watch it break off. Hopefully not. Okay. Yeah, it's touching there to the point where it can't go back even the way. Well, it kind of can. So yeah, it's touching solidly there. Let's look on the inside. See if we can get a glimpse. I don't think you guys can see it, but I can. Come on, there you are. So we are touching, looks like, right in the middle of that channel, which honestly, I think is fine. I think we're touching right here. Let me set you up so I can kind of feel. Yeah, I feel it right here. I think that's going to be fine for us. Yeah, that's what we're going to do, I think, so. We just need to clean her up and weld her back. Well, yeah, we need to clean up the tank and then weld it back up. Maybe we weld it back up, then clean the tank so that it can actually hold liquid. I don't know. And I don't know, maybe we'll coat the tank. I've never done that before. I've always just cleaned it up and sent it. But it does help, especially in something that's going to be sitting probably for quite a good amount of its life. Bend it back just a touch. And it's not a huge deal. Pretty much all, I think all actually, modern tanks have a fuel sock down in the tank. It's kind of like a pre-filter. This doesn't have it. Obviously, it's just a straight line. And there's a filter in the carb, but I'll probably throw another filter in line just because it's annoying to have to buy a whole carb rebuild kit for kind of a hard-to-find carb. So I'll throw in a filter right before the carburetor. So it's not really a huge deal if it sucks junk up. And it's a nice thick line, so it's not really at risk of plugging up, especially if this gets cleaned of any big rust particles. So I think we're going to be just fine there. Okay, so I think we're going to have to go ahead and weld her up first, because otherwise any chemical we use to clean is just going to run out. I mean, it's only the bottom that's rusty. The upper end is, or the top side is fine. It's basically clean metal. It's just the crust and junk on the bottom section. So we're going to weld it up, and then we'll get the cleaning so it can hold liquid. So let's clean all of our paint and junk off so that we can actually get a nice good weld, and then go from there. Ooh, it's going to be tricky. Some thin stuff. Ooh, that is ugly. Bridging that gap is not easy, but once we get it kind of stitched all the way around, we'll grind it flat, check where we pop through, and then, you know, do that again and again, and then probably again. Okay, so after a bunch of welding and grinding, we still have a very porous weld around our plate, which is not a huge deal because I think we'll just go ahead and coat the tank, and that should hopefully, you know, fill any holes, because it'll fill, the sealer will fill any pinholes and that kind of stuff, which is really all we've got. We don't have any big holes. The only issue is, obviously, I still need to put in our pickup tube, but the pickup tube is integral to the tank. You can't take it out like most tanks. So ideally we'd seal the tank with this in here, because we're going to make holes here probably. But I don't want to seal the pickup tube, so I'm going to have to think on that and see what we can do to keep it from getting sealed, because we don't really have any access to the inside of the tank. If this hole were nice and big, I could plug the end of the pickup and then unplug it once we're done sealing it, but I don't know. We'll see. Just found this piece of paper shoved in here in between the vent and the filler neck. There's some kind of writing on it. I don't know what it means. If there's any Packard aficionados out there, I'm sure you can let me know. Seems like we're missing a decent amount of paper though, so. I know some, I think it's GMs or I forget exactly what, but they throw a build sheet out on top of the gas tank. I wonder if this is something similar. I don't know. Alright, so after a bunch of welding, a bunch of grinding, we are not looking too good. Even tried having my brother, who's a welder, TIG weld it, and there's just too much impurity and crap on the inside, so it just bubbles through. I'll show you the pickup. You can see that's with a TIG welder on like super low amperage, just blowing through, and you can see all the soot. So I think our only chance at saving this tank, which we may end up needing to go to some other tank off of a different car and adapting it. I think our only chance to save this thing is cut it in half, do a super thorough clean on the inside, and see if we can clean it up enough that we can actually weld on it. So I'm going to cut it in half. I'll probably cut just above the seam weld on top, and I guess we'll see how the inside looks then. Well, here we go, 2 halves of a tank. Luckily, the filler neck just slides in that support. It doesn't get welded at all, which makes sense. I don't see how they could, because they put the 2 halves together and then do a seam seal. But I cut above the seam because I can't really cut the seam in half, at least as far as I could think. I think this is probably going to be the best way to go. You can see kind of all this like varnish crap we were fighting with, plus it's all rusty on the inside. We can grind this all down, obviously. It's pretty warped from the heat, but hopefully we can make this work. This doesn't really need to be perfect, because I think we could do JB Welds or something. I know JB Weld makes a gas tank specific. I don't know, we're gonna see. We may be throwing the towel in on this one. I don't know. But we're gonna see how far we can get before doing that. And then we're gonna clean up in here as best as we can. We could even maybe put a backer on here so that it's easy for us to weld, and we could weld on the inside too, just that we're not blowing through as much. Overall, the tank's not in that bad of condition. It's a little rusty and it's varnish everywhere, but that's fine. The top's fine, it's just a little surface rusty. So that'll all clean up. Probably just wire wheel it as best as I can, and then I guess we're gonna give her another go with the TIG once it's all cleaned up. Alright, after a bunch of wire wheeling, we're actually looking pretty good inside. Got a couple places I gotta hit with the drill wire brush. The angle grinder couldn't quite reach. Definitely something I'm happy I threw a mask on for. Who knows what kind of nastiness is in the varnish and rust in here. So, see the finely laid bubble gum we have here. It's got that look because I basically had to do a tack, go somewhere else, tack, 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 tack. So that's why it looks like that. We'll grind that all down flat, and we're gonna certainly poke through in a whole bunch of different places. That's okay, I don't know if we're gonna do a backing plate. We've got this so heat warped that may not work, but we might be able to just fill it in with a careful TIG application. You see lots of porosity in there. That's where we're leaking from, but overall the tank's actually in really good shape. It's really a shame that our pickup was plugged. Otherwise the tank would have cleaned up really well, probably with just some vinegar or muriatic acid or whatever. But whatever, it is what it is. Top side was fine too, obviously. The bottom's always going to be worse than the top because that's where any water or liquid settles. So yeah, overall we're looking okay. Metal's cleaning up okay, so yep. Alright, a little update on the gas tank. So I've been working on this for quite a while. I think last time you guys saw it, we had tried TIGging it once, and then I cut it in half. So I set up my TIG machine. I finally bit the bolt and got some gas for it. And I've been kind of messing around with some silicon bronze rod and also just some thin steel filler rod. And the problem is when we first tried TIGging it, we blew through so much just because there was so much impurity on the backside that it made some just nasty gaps. So the pickup, I think, might be okay-ish. I'm gonna grind this down. You see it, I mean, it's nasty as I'll get out, don't get me wrong, but I think I'll grind all this down and then we'll see how we're looking. This may be savable as it is. This patch, it was just bad, so I went ahead and cut it out. Here is the part I cut out. You can just see how just nasty these welds are, and the problem is there's just so many. The flux core had deposited a lot of flux in there, And TIG does not like that, because whenever you hit the flux, it like makes fireworks basically, and it just blows through, and the whole thing's just messed up. And it was just too thin from blowing through. So I figured the easiest thing is going to be just cut this out. Got some 22 gauge sheet metal, and we should be able to shape it to the tank. I'll probably get a pipe or something that has around that radius, put it on the pipe and just pound it around and try to get it to match that bend best I can. Once we get it tacked in a couple places, I can kind of, you know, massage the sheet just a little bit. But we'll try to get it as close as we can before we get to welding. And then we're going to clean this up as best as we can and try to get this to fit with as minimal gap as possible. Because that's what's killing us. We're just blowing through like crazy. So, you know, once it's nice and clean, we'll hopefully be alright. Just kind of going back and forth on lapping this over or just doing a butt weld. I think I'm going to try to just butt it up against it. That way we get a little bit better fit. I don't know. Again, guys, I'm no skilled welder, so I'm just kind of a butcher that gets things done sometimes and ruins things other times. So I'll bring you guys back once I kind of have an idea of how I'm going to shape it and get it fit up. Okay, so getting pretty close with our little patch. You see we're looking decent here. Once we get a solid tack along the side, we can tap this bend just a touch more. And then this side is also looking okay. It needs shaved down just a touch, but I intentionally cut it a little big so that we could take some off because we want it to be a pretty tight fit. But we're pretty close over here. Obviously, we just need to take the excess off on top and bottom, and then I think we can give her a shot while they're in. We're going to clean up the tank really, really well because that's been our issue. So I'm going to cut this to size. We'll get the tank cleaned and then give her a go. Oh, and I should mention, I have no specialty fabrication equipment, so I did all of this just with, you know, like 2 pliers, or I also got a flat piece of like 1/8 inch steel, vice gripped it across here as a straight edge, and then bent it with pliers and hammered to get a crease, that kind of thing. So basically it's just massaging it with pliers and hammers, really nothing special at all. I guess I should have shown that, but... And it's only 22 gauge, which is like nothing. So this stuff is super thin and super easy to meld. If we were dealing with like, I don't know, 1/8 inch or something, it would be a nightmare. But with this real thin stuff, not a big deal. Okay, we've got a decent-ish fit. Not perfect, but once we get it tacked, we can do a little bit of massaging. So now we'll just clean all this metal up as best we can, and then we should be good to start tacking. Alright, so wire wheeled and then flap disked to get it nice and shiny. Did the same on the inside. I think I may heat it with a propane torch really hot, just to boil off any volatile crap that we can. I mean, it's been welded on in this area, so it's been pretty hot, but we'll do it just in case, and then... Well, I don't know, I don't want to warp it too much, but we're going to be welding on it anyways. We'll see, we'll try tacking on it, and if it starts bubbling up like it was before, then we'll do it. And maybe we'll spray it down with some brake cleaner or acetone, and hopefully that'll take care of most of the volatile stuff. Alrighty, let's get this fit up and tack. Man, I'm just good at blowing holes through. This stuff is thin. Ruh-roh, this isn't looking good. No bueno. Turn the heat down even more. At this point, we're basically just, we can just switch over to our little Bic lighter at this point, I think. I'm just using MIG wire. Okay, it's actually going a little better now. Back in the corner right there. I gotta clean the tungsten. Okay, so I'm just gonna work on this for a little while and I'll bring you guys back once I make some kind of progress. I'm just kind of trying to get it tacked solid enough around here that we can massage back here a little bit more and get it solidly into place. Alright, we've got it welded up. It might be watertight now, I don't know. If you're thinking to yourself, that looks kind of crappy for a TIG weld, that's because it is. There's some porosity. No matter how well I cleaned it, there was just still junk in the base metal, you know, that whatever left from the gasoline. Whatever was left from the gasoline over the years, boiling out. I mean, it's decent, but we'll see. We may need to go back over it, and worst case, if we can't get all the porosity out, as long as we can just get it down to some pinholes, then we could coat the tank, worst case, on this. So, see, we did put some warpage in, but whatever. As long as it holds, I don't care. Again, I'm not a skilled welder, but hopefully we can get the job done here. Now we gotta go look at this, which is significantly worse. Maybe let's go leak test this with some water, and then we can look onto the pickup. Alright, I also welded from the inside, and it's a little better on this side, but you know, definitely not perfect. So, let's see. Spraying all over me. Now, I don't know yet if we're going to coat the tank, I mean, provided that all those welds seal up. Because it is kind of pricey, but, you know, I don't know. We'll see. Okay, let's stop there and see. I don't know. I don't see anything yet. You guys can't see anything either. There you go. Now, obviously, we're not putting this under full pressure because we have half the tank missing. But yeah, we're not leaking anything yet. That's pretty sweet. Getting to the bottom of the pickup, and we're leaking. I don't know what we can do there yet. I tried using silicon bronze rod, and it ended up just causing cracks. That's actually what they're leaking out of. Probably because I'm using it wrong, to be honest. So I don't know if we're going to cut that out and then cut the pickup inlet out and weld it onto a new patch panel. That may be the easiest way to go since I've kind of messed up that so far. I don't know. Let me see. I'll think on that. Okay, just about to the top. No leaks. Okay, I'm gonna leave that to sit for a while. I'm gonna think on what we're gonna do there, and then we'll come back and check. Alrighty, still zero moisture after sitting for a few. Bone dry down here still. Was not expecting that, to be honest with you, but fine by me. So I'm thinking the easiest way on this is going to be to just cut here and cut around this. You can see it's a lot wider on the inside, but we'll just cut a square around here, I guess, and make a new patch panel. That's the easiest thing I can think of, because I kind of, well, it was already really messed up from initially trying to weld on it. Just blew holes like that big through it. Bridging that gap is not fun, and that's why it looks so bad over here. I mean, it looks terrible. So yeah, I think patch panel is the way to go, just like we did on the bottom. So we'll cut here, cut around all of our butchery, and cut the pickup out. And, oh yeah, and I guess you guys probably haven't seen this. The pickup tubes was soldered in, so while I was welding on this, it fell out. Not a big deal, it's just lead solder. So we'll heat that up with a torch, put the pickup tube in where we want it, and solder it back in. Technically, we could even just braze it with that silicon bronze, but probably just use lead. Easy enough. So yeah, let's go cut this out. Get a new patch panel. Now we can fully admire my work. Bubble gum to the max. Oh, I forgot to film that, but I cut the pickup out. You see it's more bronze than steel now, so we'll have to see what we'll do there. I guess let's start by cutting ourselves a patch for that, and then we can figure out what exactly we're going to do with this. If this is not really weldable, then this is steel, so we could cut the entirety of the sheet off and just make a circle cut in our patch panel and weld around. So we have options. So cut big and go from there. So we'll cut like here, maybe a little smaller. Okay, close-ish, which is what we want. Now we need to try to match the curvature, which shouldn't be that hard because we can use the tank to shape it. First, let's see. Well, I should have cut it a little bigger, but this stuff is thin enough I should be able to just hold it. I was hoping to leave enough that I could vice grip right here, in here, but that's okay. Really, the main curvature is just the very bottom. So, grab the ball peen and we'll get hammering. That's obviously not working. Well, we can use a pipe to shape it, I guess. Close-ish. So, we need the curvature right about here. That did it. Might even be a touch too much. No, that's about right. Problem is, this is a, oop, can't see. This is a compound curve. So not only does it curve in that axis, it also curves like that. So, now we'll put the pipe like that. See if we can kind of work it out. See if we can flatten it just a little bit. Got a divot in the tank there. Pop that out while we can. Looks like we do have a curve out here, so we'll need to get the pipe and, well, we can either flatten it. It looks like I did that with the hammer. That's better. And again, we can kind of work it around once we get it tacked in place. Doesn't need to be perfect. I say let's get it cut to size so it fits in there, and then we can continue from there. Looks like our hole in the tank could use a little bit of adjustment. Take some out there. There we go. Cut that out. A little bit of excess up here. Okay, that's decent. Take a tiny bit out there. Again, there's a curve here that I didn't quite capture, but once we get it tacked, we can bend it down into place and tack it. So, call that good. Yeah, not bad at all. There's my fabrication process. Okay, now we gotta clean everything up real well. Start with wire wheel. I won't make you guys watch. Just wire wheel and then probably flap disc. Should clean it up enough. Make sure to clean up really well in here because it's kind of a weird curve. Yep. Alright, so I ended up just cutting this whole thing out of that square because it was just going to be a nightmare trying to weld that. So it's just a cylinder, got it all cleaned up, and I cut that circle out with the Dremel. So we'll go just a little deeper than it was before. You can actually see the old sheet metal. If I can get it in. We'll go just a touch deeper so that we can get to the nice solid steel. But yeah, so maybe I'll probably tack this. No, I'll leave it out. We'll get the plate tacked to the tank, and then we can deal with the pickup. Okay, we got a little bit of gappage to fill, but now that the gas is on, it seems like a piece of cake. So I'm just gonna keep going around, do the same thing as the patch on the bottom. Alright, well, this is pretty nasty, but I think it's okay. We'll go fill her up with water and see. The metal, especially on the pickup inlet, was pretty nasty. It was bubbling all kinds of gross stuff off, and you also see some porosity on this side. Alright, so it's been a little bit. I got sick, as you guys can probably hear, but I ended up having to cut out the metal over here because it was just too cruddy. I'll show you guys in a second. But we made another patch and it actually welded okay. I mean, it still looks like trash, so don't get me wrong there. But it seems to be holding water at least. And you know, worst case, we can always coat the tank and that'll seal up any small holes. And double worst case, I'm sure we could get our old friend JB to come fix this tank up for us. So just slather some on out here. They actually make tank repair and apparently it works pretty well. It's leaking out this because I just have the pickup shoved in there. We still got to solder that back in before we get too far. But I think the mess that we made by cutting out the pickup is now sealed up. It's been sitting for a while. Actually, I see some water there, but hard to tell if it wicked back up. It did not, I don't think. Where is it coming from? Wicking up the backside of the pickup? Or if there's actually a leak somewhere. It kind of looked like it was wicking. We've got a leak there. Okay. One more leak to chase down, of course. So you got a little bit of porosity there. Wonder how. But yeah, we'll just go back over that. And then, I think we're good. Alright, now that we've got this thing welded all the way back together, I'm filling it up to see how many pinholes we've got, and I have no doubt it's quite a few. I'm kind of thinking instead of welding in the areas with porosity, because that tends to just lead to more porosity, obviously, because there's something in there contaminating. I'm thinking we might try soldering it up with just normal lead solder. So we'll see. Alright, we're about halfway and we're already finding some major pinholes. You can see him marking them so we can come back and know exactly where they are. We're going to keep filling so we can see anything on the uphill. Then we've got another large pinhole right here. So yep, just keep going around, checking for leaks and marking them. Alright, so I think I got all the pinholes marked, and considering how junky and, you know, contaminant filled all this metal is, I think we did a pretty decent job. There's only like 4 spots where it's leaking, and they're all just pinholes that we should be able to fill up with solder pretty easy. And I think it's close enough that we can solder it up and cover the rest of our sins with a tank liner. So I'm gonna go grab the torch and we'll get to soldering. Alright, so I've got the water drained to a level below the well, or else it'll just be sucking away all of our thermal energy. To heat this up, I'm going to be using just a propane torch. And one mistake I see a lot of guys make when they're soldering stuff is they try to heat the solder rather than whatever surface is being soldered. So we're going to heat this up and get it to a point to where the solder is actually going to melt onto the metal. What I see a lot of guys do is they'll go and do this and start putting the solder in there, and you see it just flies out. And even if you have the flame on there, it's going to start blowing the solder away and even maybe vaporizing it. So you want to get the base metal hot enough that the solder is going to melt into it. There we go. And I'm just using a standard electronics solder, which is not ideal. We may actually need to switch to like an acid flux based solder. As you can see, these beads aren't really wicking in. But if we can just get it to sit on the surface, that's okay too. So we'll go ahead and start soldering here on this hole. I'm just going to use some regular rosin core electrical solder. Probably the best stuff to use for this would be some acid core, like what you maybe would use for plumbing, or there may be some other type of solder that would work better. But we're going to try this. So the biggest mistake I see a lot of people do when they're soldering is, one, they don't clean it, and two, you want to make sure you actually heat the base metal up and melt the solder onto the metal. What I see a lot of people do is they use the torch or the iron to melt the solder onto the base metal, which is not what you want to do. So we're going to heat this up. You don't want it too hot, or else the solder's not going to wick in there super well. But you want it just hot enough that the solder is melting into the base metal. You shouldn't have to have the torch on there. What a lot of people do is this, and you see that it doesn't work properly. Especially with this thin stuff, it just melts right away. Now this stuff's pretty dirty, so we're going to have to shove a lot of solder in there to get the flux to actually work and make the solder melt. So you saw at first how it beaded up, kind of like, I don't know, water on wax or something like that. And finally it started wetting onto the metal. You can see how it's not really bubbling or balling up on top of the steel so much anymore. So we're just going to keep working and try to get it to wet onto the top half. There we go. You see it's wetting up onto the second half. And this would probably be a faster process if we used proper solder. But this is working. Okay, and then we'll get rid of some of the excess. Alright, so that's not the best. You can see we kind of got a big blob sitting on there. Try to get rid of some of it. Really, the stuff sitting on top is not doing anything. It's the stuff that wicks into the separation between the two plates. But that might be good enough. Looks like we still got a little bit to fill. There we go. That should do it. So, just gonna rinse and repeat on all the other pinholes, and then we'll leak test again, and probably realize that we missed a bunch of other leaks. Alright, got all the pinholes sealed up, and it seems to hold the water. I ended up switching to acid solder, just because it seemed to cut into the metal a little better. This stuff's, again, this is not the ideal way to solder. You want it to be super clean. But we made it work, and we're going to be doing an extra seal, and we're going to be doing an extra tank coating that should seal it up even better. So I'm not too worried. There's this one hole over here. Could not get the solder to stick to it. There's probably some impurities in there. So we're gonna try welding that up without, you know, blowing it up even bigger. Once I got that hole welded up, and I also noticed this is wet. So it looks like our joint around the filler neck has failed. I'm not really too concerned about that. I think the tank sealer will fix that up for us, hopefully. But may end up regretting not doing anything to that, but I think we're gonna leave it for now. Alright, so we've got a quart of acetone in the tank. We're gonna go ahead and shake it around, get all the water out. It's also gonna help clean the tank. I mean, it's already pretty clean inside, but anything we missed. And we're using red coat, which is thinned by acetone or methyl ketone. So as soon as we drain out the excess, we can go ahead and start the coating process. So I'm gonna go ahead, shake this around, pour out the excess, and then we'll be ready to coat. Already got the acetone drained out. Again, this is the product we're gonna use. I think O'Reilly's a distributor for it. It was kind of hard to find because I think they weren't able to. It was kind of hard to find because I think they had to pause production because some chemical is hard to get right now. I don't know. I was able to get it off eBay. The nice thing about this stuff is it's not as prep sensitive as a lot of the other tank liners. It kind of covers a lot of sins, especially if you're not able to cut the tank open and, you know, really do a deep clean. It'll seal over rust supposedly and stuff like that, versus like Pour 15 Air Sealer, you gotta really do it right. You gotta like acid etch it and all that. I didn't want to deal with that, so this is what we're gonna try. Hopefully it does okay. I got 2 quarts since this is a tank larger than, I think it's like 20 or 12 gallons. I think we're gonna try doing 2 coats rather than all at once. So just open it up and you just rock it around, make sure all the surfaces are covered, drain the excess and let it dry. So not much to it. I've heard good things about this, but you never know until you try it. There it is. It's pretty thin. I don't know. Maybe we'll just go for all of it at once. If there's any that pours out, we can reuse it. Okay, now we just rock the tank over, make sure to coat everything. Now I'm going to be favoring the sides and the bottom, which is obviously where we've got all of our seams. But we definitely do want to aim for the whole tank to be covered. And then just to make sure the pickup's not plugged up, I'll hit it with a little blast of air just to clear it out. And then the instructions say it's really important not to get any puddles, because obviously puddles are not conducive to fast drying. And if you have uncured product, it'll apparently seep through and it can color your gasoline and clog up carbs and all that. So we're going to be avoiding that, obviously. Best we can, at least. Alright, so I'm just going to keep doing this, and I will bring you back when there's something new. Okay, I'm pretty confident now that we've got all surfaces inside the tank coated. I did go ahead and mask off the center hole, just so that we could flip it up on end and coat the top side. Now, there's still some excess in the tank, so we'll flip it up on end and use the drain hole to drain it back into one of the cans. Alright, so you can see we got it draining. We'll leave it to drip drain for a while. Make sure it's at the lowest point. Then I'm gonna go get the air compressor ready to shoot a puff of air through the pickup. So we got some cleanup to do up here, but if you look into the tank, you can see we've got a nice coating. And that's what will actually cure and turn hard. So you can see we've actually got a solid amount that's coming back out. So we're gonna seal that back up. I don't know if we're gonna need a second coat on this tank or if we can save that for later projects, but there's still even some more coming out. So we're just gonna leave it drip drying. Alright, so we're getting to the point where it's kind of tacking up too much to flow. So I'm just gonna put something else under this so we can seal it up. And we'll just leave it like this for however long it takes to cure. Alright, so I've had this tank drying for the better part of 3 or 4 days. During the day I would put it out in the sun so it heats up, and at night I'd bring it inside so it warmed up, or stayed warm. Of course I let it flash off any of the horrible chemicals so that the smell was not inside. But I should have scraped this gasket before we did anything, but we're gonna have to do it now. We also have one hole that's filled up with red coat, so we'll have to deal with that. Overall, the inside looks pretty good. You can see we missed a little bit of coverage, and there's a couple runs, but I poked them and they seem dry now. You see that weld right there. Didn't quite get full coverage, but that was never leaking. We could do a second coat at this point, but I think we're going to try this. I'm guessing we'll be good with it since we didn't have any leaks with water. Although, to be fair, gas is less viscous than water, so we may find some more leaks. In worst case, we can drain the tank and recoat. If we have any egregious leaks that we miss, which I don't think we will, we can use the JB Weld gas tank epoxy that cures in like a minute. It works pretty well. So we got options if our crappy job fails, so not too concerned. Let's get to scraping this gasket and we can get the center back in. This gasket was rock hard when we took it off. Took the sender off, rather. Which is why I didn't scrape it. I mean, you can see. I just don't have a new one, so we're going to have to make one out of paper, probably. They used cork, but paper should do okay. So, obviously, don't want to get any in the tank. Don't want to dig into the solder too much, because this is a soldered on piece. Not that this holds any pressure, but it could leak under full conditions. Oh, we're getting some crud in there. Look at that, it's turning green like copper. Oh, that's because it is copper, or bronze. Weird. I guess they did that because it solders easier. Don't know if I have a small enough tap for this. If I do, we could run a tap through and clean up the threads. So let's take a look at our sender now. This isn't your typical resistive wiper type sender. Packard used kind of an interesting design. You can see the floats on an arm, of course, and then it rotates right here, and there's actually like a cam that converts that motion into up and down, and rather than sweeping across a resistive track, it actually just flexes this diaphragm, which changes its resistance, I guess. So there's not really a way we can test this because it's not a normal variable resistance like a sweep. Instead, the current actually heats it up, and depending on the flex, it heats up less or more and then affects the resistance. That's my understanding of it. Kind of an interesting design. I believe the reason why they went with this style is because it's less prone to like bouncing or having the needle change when you go up and down hills, just because it's a slower reacting float, which is pretty smart for 1948 because there wasn't buffering electronics they could have used. So that's pretty cool. Let's get it cleaned up, especially all this rust, and make sure it swings, because right now it's a little on the crusty side. I'll just use a wire wheel to get the big chunky stuff off. I think this is less rust than it is old varnished gas. Ugh, don't breathe that stuff in. Let's pop the actual float off. You can see it's resting around there. Hopefully the float's intact. Though I don't have high hopes. I mean, I don't see any glaring pinholes, but I'm gonna go throw it in some water. We'll come back to it and see if it's still floating. See, it floats for now. Let that sit and keep cleaning. This cork has turned super crusty. I don't know if a paper gasket is going to be quite thick enough. We'll see. I think the main sealing surface is towards the middle. We'll just have to see how it sits in relation to the hole. Shouldn't be too bad of a gasket to make. I'm kind of thinking this float's still going to work because it's not like a resistive one where the track goes bad or the wiper gets all rusty. So I'm betting on it working, but maybe you have a different idea. Scotch-Brite is the best. You gotta be careful, especially if you're working on engines with it. It sheds aluminum oxide, which is super, super hard, little metal particles. And they're small enough, they'll get past oil filters and they will ruin your engine and ruin your day. Or probably week. In case if this center doesn't work, they make universal kits that we could probably cobble something together. I don't know the exact range that the gauge expects, but we can calibrate it and get it going. And I'm sure somebody else has had issues with this interesting sender design. Alright, shoot some WD in there. There you go. Pretty dang free. Not super free, we'll keep working it, but I think the float has enough buoyancy to lift this up and pull it down, which is the biggest thing. Yeah, we should be good with that. Speaking of the float, let's check that out. Of course, I put it in a mug with ETF still in it. So if these leak, usually you'll get some liquid in them. I don't hear or feel any, although there still could be a small leak. Time will tell. I'm not too concerned. This tank's super easy to drop. Who knows even if the sender's gonna work. So there's that. Looks like it's got an offset drilled holes, screws, so it only goes in one way. Which obviously I don't remember. Like that. Cool. So swing arm going that way, which I guess is the back of the car, so that makes sense. Alright, now let's get a gasket figured out for this thing. Alright, so let's cut out some gasket paper to start with. Cutting along this line. Stuff's kind of crusty. I don't know if it got wet at some point or what. So we're just going to kind of start whittling it down until the shape is about right. sometimes it's a little tricky to actually get the correct shape on some of these, but worst case you restart, it's just paper. Kind of brings you back to kindergarten, huh? Okay, that's pretty dang close. Not too bad at all. Not a mark, which is kind of the tricky thing. Holes that you can't get to the other side of. There's a couple ways you can do it. I think I'm just going to throw a dab of grease on each one of them. We'll set that down in one place, lift it up, and we should have grease spots that we can cut out. And then we should be good to go, after cutting out the center, that is. There we go, we're missing one of them, but should be close enough. So to cut these out, I'll just use a razor blade. They don't need to be exactly a circle, you know? Close enough. I mean, if you had a punch set, which is what, you know, fancy pants gasket makers have, then you just punch this out, and then you have perfect holes. I've got to... should have marked it because I don't know what goes where because of the offset holes. Probably gonna need to make a version 2 because it's starting to get a little ready to break. Okay, now we just need to widen the holes enough that our screws can fit. Okay, good enough. I think actually that gasket will work. None of the ceiling part is torn, so we can always remake one. And I don't think I'm gonna paint this tank yet, just in case we gotta do some kind of repair. I don't think we're gonna be welding or soldering on it again, because if you heat it up, the red coat fails, obviously. But we may need to do an epoxy or something like that. So I'm not gonna paint it yet, just because I don't want to go through all the prep and waiting. But we'll drop it again once we know it's good. Alright, so here's our screws. Some junk has filled the heads, it looks like, so let's see if we can scrape it out. That's why flatheads are my favorite. When they seize up, they'll just cam out, you know. Hex heads are better. Torx is okay too. Not that they really had that back then. Yeah, look at that one. We'll go nice and loose on that. I don't think I have a replacement, but I think it'll be okay. I might see if we have I might see if I have a dye to clean the threads up. Maybe also run a tap through there. Yeah, the red coat's gummed it up a little bit. I mean, yeah, a tap's probably the way to go. So it's a 10x32 fine thread, which I have a die and a tap for. So we'll go ahead and run all the screws through and clean up all the holes. This should really help us out. I believe these holes aren't blind, meaning the bottom's exposed through the end of, meaning the bottom is exposed to the tank. So there's like varnish and all kinds of junk on the threads. Like it's getting pretty hard to turn through. I gotta check, I might have 10 by 32 screws for that one that's really messed up. I like original hardware. Can't really beat the metal they used, but sometimes you gotta replace stuff. And I'm not, you know, some kind of crazy restoration guy. Like, my Packard's gotta have all new old stock parts. I don't really care. Not a big deal to me. So it looks like I do have one. It's a little longer, but we'll see if it does the trick for us. Oh, they're actually, I don't think they're blind holes actually. I believe it's enclosed. So that new screw may actually be a little long for us. Yeah, I think it's gonna be. Which we could cut it down, but we'll see if I make the old one work. Packard sure does love their split washers and tooth washers. Which tooth washers do work. Split washers, they don't really do anything in my opinion, other than, you know, act as kind of a normal washer. But I believe the theory behind it is they act like kind of a spring to spread the head of the screw or bolt apart from the actual thing being clamped down. But they kind of don't do anything. But whatever. Tooth washers do though, because they actually dig in mechanically. Yeah, we'd have to cut that down, which we could do, I guess. Doesn't have the right patina though, so I don't know. Alright, got it cut down. Now we'll run it through the die to clean up the leading thread. Alright, that should be good enough. Let's also clean up the sender connection wire. Sender connection wire. I mean the connection for the sender wire. Alright, last thing is we gotta get the drain plug back in. It's kind of gummed up with red coat, so we'll see what it needs done. So here is the plug. The threads have red coat on them because this is obviously where I drained it out of. We may just need to crank it down. And the red coat will actually help seal it up, I don't know. If it gets too crazy, we'll tap it out, but yeah, we need to tap it out. Yeah, this is a pipe plug, so I don't know if I have the right tap. We'll see. Looks like I do. Seems to be 1/4 inch MPT. I think I got this tap to tap out the galley plugs, oil galley plugs on small block Fords. You can see size-wise it's pretty similar, and thread pitch wise, it's the same. So this should be it. Now since this is a pipe, well, since this is a pipe plug, once it starts getting hard, we'll stop because it gets fatter as it goes in farther. That should do it. Yeah, look at all that red coat. Okay, we'll see. That should be okay. Worst case, we need to clean it up a little bit more. We'll start with just a couple gallons in there, and if it's leaking, we'll drain it out and restart. Alright, so I think we're ready to go ahead and get her back up and in. We just need to make sure we attach our sender wire, and I think there's a ground wire that clips on back here, if I remember right. Then we just heft it back up and put the straps on. Alright, now we just got the outlet, which is going to take a little bit of rebending because of all our butchery. So I'm going to massage that into place and get it torqued down. Alright, there we are. Now we'll just throw some gas in it and see how she does, I guess. Throw our cap on because we can. Alright, let's see if she'll fire up now. Alright, so it looks like we got the tank all good to go. We don't have any leaks so far. So next time we're going to be hopefully getting this thing roadworthy. Yeah, we got a little bit more work to do on the carb, but then I think honestly this thing's about ready to hit the road. So I'll see you then.